The first thing we have to think about is quadrilaterals. All right, first thing you need to know about a quadrilateral is that it has four sides. Okay. The other thing we probably should know about a quadrilateral, since we know it has four sides, which means it makes two triangles, and 2 times 180 is it has an interior sum of 360 degrees. Okay. So besides that, we don't really know much more about quadrilaterals, but what we're going to start to do is study families of quadrilaterals. I am going to send this out as well, and so when you get this special quadrilateral flowchart, you'll see right here, you also need to fill it in here. So right now we're going to fill this in as 4 sides, and interior sum is 360. And what you need to realize about what we're studying is everything on this flowchart, these shapes that we're going to study next, kite, trapezoid, isosceles, rhombus, rectangle, and square, all are quadrilaterals. So when I ask you about what's one thing you know about a kite, you could tell me it has 4 sides and an interior sum of 360. But that's not going to be a very specific name, or that's not going to be very specific details for a kite. And if you use that, that wouldn't be telling me what a kite is. So we want to start very general, but then we're going to get to the more specific details. Just like you could relate this to dogs. If I had a dog here, and then I have different categories of dogs. Obviously, there's retrievers, there's labs, there's poodles, there's all these different kinds. So if I say I have a 4-legged animal with fur, you're not going to even be telling me it's a dog. Once I tell you I have a dog, you still have no clue what kind of dog I have. So you just want to get more specific with these shapes. And once you know all the details, then you're going to be good at what quadrilateral we're talking about. First shape we have today is a parallelogram, okay? And obviously, hopefully from the name, you could tell me the very first thing are that opposite sides are parallel. And that's number one true in a parallelogram, and that's, are parallel. And that's why it's called a parallelogram. So what does that mean? It means this side and this side and this side and this side are parallel. Okay. Something else we need to know about a parallelogram is that the opposite sides are congruent. Okay, so when the shape was made, we now know that this side and this side have to be the same length, and that side have to be the same length. The third property that I want to talk about first is we need to know that opposite angles inside a parallelogram are also congruent. Okay, so that means this angle here, whatever it is, must be the same as this one. And this one must be the same as that one. Now, the fourth property is not a property you would by any means have to memorize, okay? These kind of properties, you're going to have to look them up. You're going to kind of have to memorize them. Not much more I could do. But this property, if we, for example, knew that this is 60 degrees, let's just say, and we knew this was 60 degrees. Well, guess what? This line and this line are parallel. This acts like a transversal. So if this is 60 degrees, these two angles have to be what? Hopefully you realize supplementary. So if that's 60, this has to be 120. Okay, why? Because this line and this line are parallel, and going the other way, obviously, this line and this line are parallel, which makes this a transversal. So if that's 60, these would be same side interior. These would be same side interior. So we are going to say consecutive angles, meaning next to each other, are supplementary. Okay. So again, not something we necessarily have to memorize, but at the same time, it is a unique characteristic to a parallelogram and probably something we don't want to forget. Last property, I'm going to bring you down here. The last property of a parallelogram is about the diagonals through parallelogram. And I hope if you kind of look at this, you realize that this diagonal here is not the same size as that diagonal. So that's something to try to consider, because remember, there's going to be a lot of memorization. Now, nice part for you guys is your notes are always going to be handy. But if you think about being in class, you would not have your notes for all your assessments. So you would have to know these and memorize these. So you kind of picture a parallelogram in your mind, and you want to realize that they're not equal in a parallelogram. But what is true is that the diagonals, this is what I call number 5, diagonals bisect each other. Means that this length and this length are the same as, are the same, and that this length would be the same as this length. So they cut each other in half. Now, one thing we have to remember, if we go to our flow chart, okay, and what I would like you to do is type in all these properties. So right here on the parallelogram, I would like you to go back and rewrite 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because they're going to be important. But what I need you to realize in this flow chart is next we're going to study rectangle, rhombus, and square. Well, every one of these shapes, rectangle, rhombus, and square, is a parallelogram. So if I ask you about a rectangle, it automatically has 5 properties and 2 more. It has 4 sides and an interior sum. So these properties, rhombus and rectangle, get harder because they automatically have 5 properties and something else. Now, if I turned around and said, okay, describe a rectangle to me, is your best description that opposite sides are parallel? No, it's not the best description, because just like a dog telling me I have a dog is not a good description. Telling me I have a, parallelogram is not a great description of what type of parallelogram shape you have. So as we get into these, we're going to be more specific, but what I need you to remember is if you don't know these 5 properties, then you're not going to know all the properties of a rectangle. So that's something to consider. And if you would, could you just try to go through these next couple questions real quick, pause the video, and see if you could just get these done due to the properties that we just went over. All right, in the first one, we're going to use the rule that opposite angles are congruent. So 76 equals 4n. In number 4, we're going to use the property that, we're going to use a couple of them, opposite sides are congruent. So right here, I'm going to set 2x minus 3 equal to 37 and solve. I'm going to go back to the fact that opposite angles are congruent. So I know y is 123. And now I need to use that these are consecutive, meaning next to each other. So I'm going to set them equal to 180. So z is 57. In number 5, I'm going to look at that this diagonal is cut in half. So this is going to be equal to this, and this guy is equal to that. So you're going to set that up and get these answers. And then we're going to look at this last one together. One thing you got to pay attention to, why this one's a little tricky, is they're telling you this entire angle's 84, which means this entire angle's 84, which now tells me this entire angle, or this entire angle, is 96, right? 96. So if that's 96, this whole thing's 96, and 96 minus 28 is 68. So then IKH is 68. Okay, there's our first introduction for parallelograms.